today's video, I want to return to Symfony tutorials. And the new topic will continue the themes from the previous videos about PostgreSQL. And it will be dedicated to the Doctrine ORM. So, don't waste time and let's go!
In the upper right corner, there will be a link to tutorials on how to set up and run your first Symfony application. And we move on and begin to study Doctrine. Doctrine is the best set of PHP libraries primarily focused on database storage and object mapping. All necessary tools for using databases in Symfony application are provided by Doctrine, and it supports relational databases. If you want to use Doctrine in your Symfony project, first you need to install it. Don't forget that we use Docker in our application, so we'll install it in PHP service using this command. Also, you can install the Maker bundle that will help to generate some code. Now we need to configure the database. For this, let's find an open.env file. Here in the variable called database URL is stored the database connection information, but for local development I'll create .env.local file. And here I'll define the database URL variable. Let's find and open doctor-compose.yml file. And here we need to find the DB service with connection information for the database. Here read. Now we can customize database underline URL variable from the .env.local file. Please note, if the username, password, host or database name contain any special character, for example, such as plus, @ $, $, asterisk, exclamation mark, and so on, you have to encode them using URL encode function. And also in this case, you need to find an open doctrine.yml file. Let's find it. And delete here this resolve prefix. You need to do this to avoid errors. Now we set up connection parameters and we can connect to our database. Let's do it. Doctrine has a lot of different commands. To see a full list of it, use command. So, we move on. Let's imagine that in our Symfony application, we need to display a list of contacts, and to represent those contacts, we need an entity object. Let's understand what is an entity. Entities are usually objects defined by classes with variables that store values of simple objects that represent important application data structures. Thanks to the Maker bundle, we can create entity using this command. And now press Enter to finish adding new properties.
So, what happened after executing the command? I'll show it. There was created two files. The first is contact.php, it's an entity, and the second one is contact.repository.php. And let's back to the entity. Let's open it. Entity is a normal PHP class that you can save to the database. What is this entity consist of? It is the namespace where in our project all entities lives. Here we connect all dependencies for the given class. In this attribute, we specify which repository will process this entity. Here we declare a class that called contact. Here we see all that properties that we added using Maker bundle. An ID property, here it, was generated automatically. These attributes are needed for the entity to interact with the database. Actually, because of Doctrine, the contact class will turn into contact table in the database, and each property in the contact entity can be mapped to a column in the table. And this is usually done with attributes. Here we see get and set methods for the entity properties. Getter and setter strategies are utilized when we need to restrict the direct access to the variables by end users. Getters and setters are methods used to define or retrieve the values of variables, normally private ones. Just as the name suggests, a getter method is a technique that gets or recovers the value of an object. Also, a setter method is a technique that sets the value of an object. And also, as I said earlier, there was created repository file. A repository represents an architectural layer that handles communication between the application and data source. It is a widely used pattern whose main point is that the application does not have to know which data source is implemented and how it is implemented. This makes it easier to switch to another data source or implement structural changes to the existing data source. Like an entity, it also has namespace and connected dependencies. When a repository is generated through a maker bundle command, it contains a certain template, but we will leave in this class only two methods for creating and deleting rows in the database table. Here it. And also we leave construct. So let's remove everything we don't need in this case. As you can see, also we left construct method to inject ManagerRegistry as Doctrine service. Please note that the repository should be extended with service entity repository. Here it allows you to use auto wiring. And let's back to get method. Here we tell to Doctrine that we want to save the contact with no queries yet. And here the insert query actually executes. In the remove method, the same logic, with only difference that we delete the row instead of adding. Doctrine provides several different ways to specify object relational mapping metadata: attributes, doc block annotation, XML and PHP code. As for YML, it deprecated and will be removed in ORM version 3.0. Read more about this in the Doctrine project documentation. And one more important note: don't use reserved SQL keywords as your table or column names. For example, group or users. To see list of these words, just Google SQL common reserved words. To escape this in attributes, you can use name option to change the table name or configure the column. To find example how to do it, you can in Symfony documentation.
Now entity is ready and we can make next step and create the contact table in database. We can do it in two ways. First, we can use Doctrine Schema update command. And the second way is to make migration. Let's try this both ways. So, Doctrine Schema update is incredibly powerful command. It knows how your database should look like because of the mapping information of your entity. And this command compares the expected state of the database with the current state, and then it executes the SQL statements needed to update the database schema to where it should be. Please note that Doctrine Schema update command should be used only
for your local development, and it should not be used in your production environment. So, let's try this command in practice. But the better way to take advantage of such functionality is using migrations. It allows you to generate SQL statements and store them in migration classes that can be run systematically on your production server. This approach helps you safely and reliably update and track changes in the database schema. So, let's change the entity and then I'll make migration. If you open this migration file, you'll see the SQL needed to update your database. To run it, execute your migration by this command. This command executes only that migration files that haven't yet been run against your database. Please note that you should run the migrate command on production when you deploy to keep your production database up to date. So, we can move on and save the contact object to the database. To do this, we need to create a controller and an action inside it. As we already know, the main task of the controller is reading information from the request object and creating and returning a response object. The controller must be seen. All logic must be taken out of it. Therefore, we will produce the contact object using a factory. So, let's start creating a factory and then go directly to the controller.
Great! New lines appeared in the database. You can easily fetch an object from the database. You can do it in several ways. The first one is to add ManagerRegistry argument into the controller method to use the Doctrine service. I'll show it. If you get repository object, you can use some helper methods. For example, find all, find by, find one by, get class name. We will use find method. Also, you can use contact repository using Symfony's after wiring and inject it by the dependency injection container. Also, you can simplify controller using Sensio Framework Extra Bundle. It will do the query for you automatically. I'll show how to do it, but first we need to install this bundle. I'll show you how to update an entity object. So here we do three things. First, we fetched the entity object from Doctrine. Second, we modified the object. And third, we called flash method on the entity manager. It's not necessary to call persist method because Doctrine is already watching your object for changes. And now I'll show you how to delete an entity object. I hope you enjoy this video and see you next time.